A while ago, I made a video titled "Something's Wrong with Roblox," in which I stated that Roblox as a platform just doesn't feel as strong as it used to, due to, in my mind, the increasing motivation to make money on the platform instead of making high quality games. Well, a good number of people interacted with that video, some agreeing, some pointing out some games they like that I didn't talk about, and some respectfully disagreeing, with a few, obviously, calling me flat out wrong, as I expected. Recently, I decided to act on that though, and I came back after a long break and tried 10 games alongside my friend Anti, who some of you may know as the co-creator of Alfonso. Now, real quick, I do just want to say that I had the idea for this video way before any of this Predator stuff was coming out about Roblox. Yeah, I guess people on the site, I don't know, it's turned into what, K-pop pedo hunter or something like that. Anyways, I just want to say that I do not support, what Roblox is doing in regards to seemingly defending predators. That seems, kind of bad. Now, of course, I don't know the whole story because I'm not directly involved or anything like that. I only get snippets of information from people who may or may not be biased. But, based on what I know, it seems like Roblox is ceasing vigilante justice, which, okay, their choice, but at the same time, they don't have the necessary precautions to stop predators on what is ultimately a children's platform. So, therefore, Roblox is obviously in the wrong. I just want to say that. Without further ado, let's get into the video. We each picked 5 games from either most popular or top playing that seemed to give differing experiences that either looked interesting or, well, performed well on Roblox. Going into each game, we wanted to play for at least 30 minutes, as we figured that gives ample time to get out of any tutorials and experience some genuine gameplay. And then, if we really enjoyed the game or felt there was more to do, we could continue. We also came up with our own ranking system, which means that everything said in this video is pretty much opinionated. But our ranking system had 3 positive categories for each game: how fun they are, how engaging they are, and how much heart and soul the game had. So basically, how much effort the game has, personality, atmosphere, how does it look good, does it look bad, and does all of that shine through, is it noticeable? Because sometimes a game has these really cool effects, but you just never see them. We also had 2 negative categories, one being how repetitive the game is, which, is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you could be engaged in tower defense games all the time, because maybe you're constantly putting towers down or constantly analyzing what's going on, but they all follow the same formula. It's always the same thing over and over and over again, so it can still be repetitive whilst being engaging. The biggest negative though, and this weighed really heavily for us, was in-app purchases. If they were easy to find, plentiful, overly expensive, or maybe there was something that promoted in-app purchases, that would cause it to rank way higher. After all of the rankings, we did positive category total minus negative category total to get the actual total. This means getting a perfect 30 was practically impossible, and genuinely good or fun games would sit around 10, with the best getting closer to 20. Then, with our criteria sorted, we hopped into game 1 of 10, which happened to be none other than Build a Boat. Anti actually had a bit of experience years ago in this game, so he showed off a handful of quote-unquote boats that we had fun with. My favorite was the catapult. The game is pretty self-explanatory though, and we ended up trying a whole bunch of stuff. The house from Up came to mind, as well as the boat Phil Swift used flex tape clear on and rode above sharks. I still don't even know what that guy's deal is. Ultimately though, Anti had a spacecraft we could pilot to the end. Most of our playtime was spent messing around with various crafts, each with differing levels of quality. When it came time to rank the games, it was kinda hard, and I think it's where playing with others really impacted us. For fun, I gave Build a Boat a 7, but I think it was because Anti had so much goofy stuff to show off, and the idea of building something insane with somebody raised the score. I think I also gave it a high engagement score because I focused more on that building side of things compared to riding the boat. You gotta be locked in to build some of this stuff, so credit to those who do. Other than that, I think the scores make sense. The game is fairly low effort in my opinion, but I didn't see many instances of spending Robux. However, outside of building, the game is just sitting and piloting your machine, and even then, building can get tedious over time. Build-A-Boat's total score ended up being an 11 from myself and a 9 from Anti. And up next was Pressure. This was a game Anti suggested because he actually plays it. Going into it guided, I quickly realized it was similar to Doors, which I think is good, but I know the genre can get repetitive, so I braced for that. I will say the game looked incredible and had a great atmosphere. If you're someone who's scared of the open ocean or monsters in the deep, then I could see this really scaring you. So off the bat, it left a good first impression. I wasn't really scared while playing though. Jump scares can get me easily, but I'm just jumpy. And because of it not being incredibly scary, I think it lowered the fun for me. These types of games are not bad by any means, but I don't enjoy them to an insane degree, and I think if there was more tension, then they would be better. But I just typically don't feel that. However, the game did have me fairly locked in. There was some downtime, but much more game time where I had to be present. And as I said earlier, beautiful game with great presentation and models, so it ranks high on Heart and Soul too. I didn't see any in-app purchases in my playtime, but Anti knows they're hidden away somewhere. Other than that though, Pressure's biggest flaw to us was its repetition. The game is good, but the enemies get stale and it quickly becomes a speedrun to a big event. This problem applies to all games like this, because you'll learn what each enemy does, and after that, it's all just either being good enough to get past them or having good positioning. There are some set pieces, like the underwater escape sequence that we played. I made it practically to the end, but died because the monster missed, and then got stuck in an animation that blocked the exit, so I couldn't get past, and then it killed me, and I didn't realize that could happen. This, understandably, led to frustration, which I think is what detracts most from Pressure. You want to be scary without being too frustrating. Otherwise, the player will feel frustrated and not scared. With our scores gathered, Pressure got a 16 from myself and a 15 from Anti, putting it above Build-A-Boat and currently at number 1. The next game we played was called Fling Things and People, and the idea seemed like it'd be funny, but to be honest, the game was kind of a bore. It's a staple of having the first 5 minutes or so be strong, and then it's just the same thing forever and ever. Suffice to say, it ranked pretty poorly for both of us on all fronts. There's not a lot of positives other than it being fun to play with another at first, but thanks to how horribly repetitive it is, it got a 10 in repetition from both of us, which is very bad. The poor scores ultimately ended up with it getting a -2 from myself and a 0 from Anti, currently making it the worst game on our list. Hopefully we'd be onto something better in Bedwars. Bedwars was the only game I picked that I knew I had played ages ago because I remembered it being really fun, and that actually held true when we gave it a go. While the game doesn't look incredible or doesn't have insane models, it's clear that some level of care was put into what it did create, and with the nature of it being online PvP, you generally have to focus and be present fairly often. You can turtle, of course, and just stick to your island, leading to less confrontation, but when there is confrontation, you do kind of need to lock in. However, the game is so goofy that it was a lot of fun for us, actually, and was something we both agreed would be fun to revisit with 2 more players. We found few in-app purchases, as once you're in a match, I don't think you can see them, and we didn't spend a lot of time in the lobby. However, because of how Bedwars works, things kinda always work out the same. Same goals, same methods kinda deal. Ultimately, Bedwars scored the exact same on each category for both of us, meaning it got an 11 from us both. Up next, we were supposed to play Cliff, an obvious ripoff of the game Peep. Now this leads me to a side tangent I touched in my last video. There are so many games that just rip off other games, and while I'm not going to be the kind of guy who tells you not to emulate, Lord knows I have before, the issue lies in the fact that people rip off these games and then put in a lot of in-app purchases to profit off other people's hard work and effort. So when Cliff seemingly got taken down, I was all for it, because that's an indie team just losing money. I also see Pokemon is getting copied again, and if it gets taken down, I'm not going to be one to complain, because it's not inherently emulation that is the problem, it's using another person's work to profit, and that's what these bad Roblox games like to do. Also, they're generally just not well made, for the most part. With that tangent out the way though, we clearly couldn't play Cliff, so we played a game that a friend had brought up the other day, and that just so happened to be Steal a SpongeBob. The game is ass. Although when it comes to fun, I had to give it a 10, because fun is more than just a word or a ranking. See, F is for friends who do stuff together, and Steal a SpongeBob knows that. Otherwise, the game was pretty unremarkable. I got a -2 from me and a -9 from Anti, making it the current worst game on our list. And that was the last game we played on day 1, which leaves our current rankings with Pressure in first and Steal a SpongeBob in last. On day 2, we started with Hide the Body, and it was the second in a short list to not do very well. The concept is rather silly, but the gameplay just wasn't that fun for me or Anti. You do gotta be pretty quick to act though, depending on your difficulty. The game had some in-app purchases, and while I didn't find many, Anti did find a few. And with a repetitive premise of just stabbing a stranger and hiding them somewhere, the game ended up scoring pretty low. With the game not seeming too high effort from what we experienced, it scored a -2 from me and a -5 from Anti. Better than Steal a SpongeBob, but not by much. I have a strange relationship with tower defense games. I love titles like Plants vs. Zombies and Bloons, but a big reason as to why is because it feels like there's endless combinations or possibilities in those games in terms of a viable defense. Meanwhile, Roblox games can be pretty restricting, which I don't really like. However, my innate bias for tower defense games led to me ranking this higher than Anti in terms of fun, but its story mode is awful. It was boring as it felt like there was never any threat. And while I understand these are the first couple levels in story mode, the 3 towers I got to start with crushed the levels like it was nothing, which just felt too strong. I'd understand if it was that simple on easy mode, but on the hardest difficulty there should be some amount of challenge, and there just was none. I will say the visual effects were neat and impressive at the very least. I could tell the devs at least cared about making something that looks good, but with something else we'll get into later, I can see multiple reasons as to why. Anti was lenient in in-app purchases, pretty much across the board I think, but this game was the first time I gave one a 10, because this game is egregious. I'm not sure if this is the only way to get towers, but the only way we found was to summon for them. Anti, being a Genshin player, didn't have as big of an issue with this, and ended up getting the 1% 5-star tower in like less than 5 pulls. Meanwhile, I got like the same 3 towers over and over again, meaning I spent all my currency just to only really unlock 3 or so towers, none of which I even needed to use, mind you. And as if that's not bad enough, it shows you the pity system, so you know that if you spend more, your odds increase. And the game makes it obvious where you can go to buy currencies and all sorts of other things for oftentimes an exorbitant amount of Robux. Getting anything good costs you so much in-game currency, and the game does whatever it can to entice people to buy in-game currency by making things look cool and making the currency easy to purchase. That, coupled with the gacha system, which I think is super shitty in general, especially on a platform mostly used by kids, this game easily got a bad score. And locking how many towers you can use, unlike Bloons, drives repetition up because it makes it hard to experiment with numerous different strategies. In the end, this game got a -4 from me and a -2 from Anti. Not the worst score, but my lowest score so far. I wish I could say things got better, but they really didn't. Because next we played Blox Fruits, and dear lord does it just do this stuff but worse. It wasn't that fun within our time frame because all we really gained access to was basic melee and a sword. We were doing quests, don't get me wrong, but I only got the first fruit at the very end of our session, so the grind is just unbearable early game. The game was also just boring in general. We didn't unlock PvP until level 20, so we couldn't even battle each other, or jump other players for a semblance of fun. Although we were so weak, we probably would have died instantly anyways. The one thing this game has going for it, from my perspective, is that it has some nice visual effects, but that was it. It was a boring M1 slop fest, fighting NPC after NPC to complete quests and level up. Sure, we could have gotten a fruit earlier if we didn't get a sword, but if you want a sword or gun, you just take longer to get a fruit. And even then, each new fruit or weapon has a mastery, and you get locked to one skill until mastery 20, which I didn't hit once the entire time I played for anything. The game was just the same cycle of killing NPCs and waiting for them to respawn, claiming the quest when you completed it, and doing a new quest. Insanely repetitive. The in-app purchases are horrid as well. Not only does this game have a gacha system for fruits, but when you just go to buy one with in-game coins, right next to the purchase button it has the price in Robux so you can buy it with that way instead. This doesn't even mention the fact that the market button, which shows all the Robux purchases, is rainbow colored to attract people. And even then, some shit costs thousands of Robux. And at the very bottom of their market tab, they tell you what you get for having Roblox Premium, incentivizing people not only to spend Robux on their game, but also to subscribe to Roblox's subscription service for extra benefits. And so they make more money, of course, when you play with Premium. I think this game is disgusting, and my rating proves that, because I gave it a -9, and Anti followed behind me with a -7, making Blox Fruits worse than Steal a SpongeBob. Thankfully, the next game was much better than that piece of garbage we had just played, although it did have problems of its own. Forsaken did prove to be a pretty good game. It was decently fun, although I experienced a bug in my second or third game that got me killed, so that did actually impact my score. However, where Forsaken really succeeded was in how engaging it was, and how clear it was that a good level of care was put into it. Due to being an online game where the threat could be anywhere, you gotta constantly be on your toes at the very least. You may not always be in danger, but you need to be able to act when you are. The game also has a good atmosphere and a lot of care in its animations, which help it stand out to me. However, it's not like it does anything crazy or unordinary, using basic player models for its cast of characters. The shop does have a Robux specific tab, and some of those prices are insane. I'm not sure if any of the more expensive stuff is worth the Robux, but you shouldn't spend 2k plus Robux on in-game currency anyways. If the game isn't a boring grind, that shouldn't even be necessary. With that said, it does give the game a worse rating, as insane prices like that just shouldn't exist. But I'm sure it does because there are people who will spend that much in some cases, so people will keep charging that much. With a similarly high repetition score for following a simple formula, and having little gameplay-based customization, as well as having most characters locked behind a chunk of coins, it means that this game got a 6 from me and an 11 from Anti, who didn't actually notice the high in-app purchase price, so he gave it a higher score. Finally, our last game is Dead Rails, and for me it was relatively similar to Forsaken. I think it was more fun for the goofy moments we experienced in the game, but it wasn't as engaging and didn't have as much effort. What helped this game be on a similar level to Forsaken was that I didn't find that much in terms of in-app purchases. While it didn't score as well as Forsaken in most aspects, it didn't lose as many points. In the end, giving it a 6 from me and a 7 from Anti. The game was fun, but there's just not much to say about it. We thought we were playing hard mode at first, but that's just because some of the zombies move at absolutely insane speeds. I got bum rushed frame 1 and died in our first game. With this game ranked, I can now say that the best game we played was Pressure, and the worst game we played was easily Blox Fruits. I'd honestly rather play Steal a SpongeBob, it was that bad for me. Now, while these are 10 games we played for this string of 10, there were 2 others we checked out that were actually pretty fun. Now, because these were extra games, we didn't actually rank them, so I can only speak for myself when I talk about them. And I'll start with Suitborn. Suitborn is a game based on the Godzilla analog horror series The Man in the Suit, I believe. I love Godzilla, so I was naturally interested in this game, and I think it's fairly fun. Also, that should be a preconceived notion to let you know that I might be a little biased in this ranking, so do forgive me for that. This game is kinda like a free roam FNAF game, but every night gives you new tasks instead of the AI only getting harder or something like that. Night 1 you collect posters, and night 2 you gotta go into the basement and rebuild an animatronic. It's definitely spooky, but also pretty hard. Sometimes even frustratingly hard. I'll give it an 8 for fun, which might be a little biased, again as I said earlier, but I do think it's more fun than the other games I've listed. Being a horror game where you have to go around and do things without knowing where the threat is, makes this game very engaging to me. Similarly to that of Pressure, if you get caught with your pants down, you will be cooked. For engaging, I'll give it an 8 as well. And then for Heart and Soul, this is really high up there for me. The models seem to be made by the devs, but have a large amount of attention to detail and overall care to them. On top of that, the posters you're collecting and other things you can find are all super cool references that in some cases you'd have to really dig deep for to find. The animatronic in the second level is based on the animatronic used for the Return of Godzilla, or what's left of it anyways. That, coupled with the good sound design and unsettling atmosphere, I think this gets a 9. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. This game does have some in-app purchases in the form of game passes and donations. Each game pass gives gameplay functionality or quality of life, so that's nice at least, and they're all less than $5. Although I would like these to be unlockable without Robux either way. It sucks that these exist at all. As for donations, those are really weird, and I didn't know how to rank them exactly. I wouldn't consider them as bad as currency purchases because there's no incentive to get them, whereas the incentive for buying coins would be skipping the grind or something similar, maybe buying more stuff. There's a reason to buy coins, and it's usually why they're so predatorily priced. However, if they're unreasonably priced, that still doesn't make donations good either. I'd give Suitborn a 4. I typically don't like free roam FNAF games, because it usually boils down to generator fixing simulator. Oh, the power's out, go fix the generator, don't die to Freddy Fazbear, ah! This game does have that as well, which I don't care for, but not having to purchase rolls in order to have a unique nightly task is really nice, and I enjoy how it actually requires exploration without having to save 6 figures to be a janitor. For that reason, I'm gonna give Suitborn a 4. I think it's the least repetitive game because each night is something new in what is usually a stale formula. This means Suitborn gets a 17 from me, which again, may be biased, I will admit, but I genuinely think this game is really good, and it isn't too egregious with Robux prices, donations aside, but even then, they are donations. They are literally telling you, hey, if you want to, like, this gives you nothing, so don't spend your money on this unless you have extra to spend. The second game we played was Outcome Memories, and off the bat, I think it gets a 6 for fun. I like it more than Forsaken because I can more clearly tell when I can and can't defend myself as a survivor, which led to my frustrations with Forsaken when I tried to defend myself and just ate shit and died. It doesn't go much higher though because playing as Sonic.exe can be really annoying if you don't know what you're doing, because you just get stunned a lot. For engaging, it gets a 7 like Forsaken did, similar formula and all that. Heart and Soul I think gets an 8 though, as I enjoy the fact that Evil Sonic talks shit when he kills people, as well as the models looking really good, especially Metal Sonic. Outcome Memories has no in-app purchases from what I can tell, and I look, so it gets a 0. Although for repetition, I will say it also gets a 6. Even though all characters are unlocked at the start, having only one Evil Sonic as of now really hurts. This gives Outcome Memories a total score of 15. It's crazy how much in-app purchases drag down these scores looking back at everything now. With these bonus games, my top game is actually Suitborn, with Antis being Pressure, and our combined worst is Blox Fruits. But did this prove anything to me? It did, kinda. There are games on Roblox that are good, and I never disputed that. But we played 12 games and left out games that we both knew were total slop and not worth playing. I've played games like 99 Nights in the Forest and it's awful. And a good chunk of most popular or total playing are those slop games. So while games like Suitborn, Pressure, and Outcome Memories shine a light on these devs who can make great things, ultimately they are still overshadowed by slop.